This podcast is dedicated to those who have found their way from fear to freedom and for those who are considering undertaking this amazing journey. This is the Courage to Be podcast, and I'm your host, Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I want to share an amazing opportunity, my signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening this November 7th through the 9th in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from this 3-day in-person event shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears, own your worth, so that you can have a greater impact in the world. This event is life-transforming and already filling up. And don't take my word for it, just go to our site and listen to what participants are saying. I'm gifting you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and review on iTunes. Take a screenshot and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type event discount to claim your discounted ticket. You can also find that email in our show notes. I look forward to being your mentor and guide and transforming your life. See you in Santa Fe. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And today we have Cammy Guildner with us. Welcome, Cammy.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tanya. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I'm so excited. And I was going to start the podcast with tell us a little bit about what is it that you do in your own words. But before we get to that, Cammy, because something that stood out and the questions, about courage, this podcast is all about courage. I saw something in there that said that you landed a hot air balloon after a pilot fell out. And talk about courage. I need to know this story before we go into the main juice
Oh my
of
God,
everything.
that's so funny. So I was 21. It was my 21st birthday. And I went up, it was my birthday present. We got up early, did this hot air balloon ride. And it was just me and the pilot and the balloon. And it was a beautiful day out over the plains of Colorado. And as we were starting to come in, the wind had picked up a bit and we were going to land in a cornfield. And the cornfield had been harrowed up, right? So it was like, it had been tilled. And so there was like clumps of dirt from the tilling. And as we were coming in to land, we started to hit the tilled up earth on the basket. And we hit one big chunk of dirt and it tipped the basket. And I fell to the bottom of the balloon. And I kind of pulled myself back up. And the pilot had fallen out, and I looked over the edge and I was like 30 feet up above the ground at that point because the balloon was rising back up. And I was like, oh my God. And there's a radio that was right above me with the truck that was following us. And they're like, Cammy, this is what you're going to do. You see the rope above your head. You're going to pull that rope and this balloon's going to come down. And lo and behold, I pulled the rope and the balloon came down and I landed it and it was all safe. But there's my story.
Oh my God. Was the pilot okay when he fell out?
The pilot was fine. He's like running after me like, ah.
Oh my God. Thank you for sharing that. Talk about courage. I mean, because you have to get yourself
Well,
back into
it was in a
composure.
moment, right? It was all happened just a split seconds and it was very fast. And, I don't think I even had time to think. It was just
the process.
Yeah. It was just like, okay, this is what I got to do. And
look, I'm just going to tell, I don't like telling usually my stories, but I have one with that. I jumped out of a plane. We were jumping out. It was 3 of us. And so I was in the middle. The first guy went out and we were all synced with the radio. And we jumped by ourselves. It wasn't like a tandem thing.
Okay.
So the first guy jumped out. I jumped second and then the third one. And so they were like, number two, meaning me, you have to land. And there was this circle where you were supposed to land. And I was enjoying, just hanging out there on the flight, with the parachute. But as I started approaching closer to the ground and seeing all these cornfields, it's funny that you're talking about cornfields too. And we both had an incident like this. I was seeing the landing circle or the target very far away from where I was supposed to land in that circle. So I asked them and they said, number 2, you're just going to, pull on your strings. They had trained us with that. And you're going to land in the cornfield. And I literally landed like your guy that
right
fell
through the
out
corn.
right into the corn, and I just got like the parachute got all stuck in the corn and stuff. So it's funny that we both share like
We have
these
corn stories.
landing situations and cornfields. What a great way to start this
Like, I
podcast,
love
Cammy,
it.
sharing these cornfield landing stories. But
Yeah,
tell us,
funny.
please, what is it that you do? And tell us in your own words.
Okay. Well, I'm a business coach and I help women entrepreneurs. I have a passion for raising up women's voices, for helping them be seen and be heard and grow businesses that they just truly love. And growing businesses that are prosperous, well, from a wealth perspective, but they're also prosperous from a time perspective. And really, giving us space and time to live our lives. And that's, I'm really passionate about. It's not just going out and getting into a grind, but it's actually, you know, paying attention to our soul wisdom and building businesses that we're called to build because our work is so important, and making a ripple effect with the work that we put out into the world.
That's beautiful. And where do you feel like that came from, that wanting to help women be heard and be seen? Where did that passion come out from you?
I spent 20 plus years in the oil and gas industry an oil and gas software industry as a marketing executive. And so I was always in a very male dominated industry. I mean, I worked with some amazing women too, but I worked with amazing men during those years as well. And I just had this feeling that, I tapped when I left the corporate world behind. I just kept getting drawn to working with women. And I think I was on my own very deep spiritual journey, and something that I didn't really have in my corporate days. And as I started to really tap into this kind of spiritual guidance for myself and like listening to my inner wisdom and discovering my own voice, I just saw, I think that the language that I started using really attracted women. So I didn't just set out to work with women when I first started my business, but all the people that were drawn to me were women. And it's because I used very feminine words. I used words that were, kind of spiritually grounded. And I love to mix the spiritual and the strategy together. I think it takes both sides of that. But I think the words and the language that I use really just attracted women. And the more I started working with women, I'm like, well, of course, this is exactly who I'm supposed to be working with.
That's wonderful. We need more women supporting women
We
and
do.
raising
You were just
each
talking about
other.
helping women in their podcast, launch their podcasting. And it's like that passion that when we find it, it's like, and I think women's voices, I think that's an important part of this. It's like giving women a place to put their voice out into the world. And I think that is going to change our world, because the more women are stepping into their voice, the more we're stepping into our wisdom, we really create a different future for our world. And that's exciting to me.
How can we step into our voices as women?
Mm-hmm.
Because I do see many powerful women, that
Mm-hmm.
might have gotten like, college degrees at Ivy League schools, and here we are trying to prove ourselves and our value,
Mm-hmm.
yet we're still missing a little bit of that voice. Like, what does that mean to you, Cammy, stepping into
Yeah.
our voices, and how can we do that?
Yeah. I think it starts from an inside out job, really. it's like really tuning into who you are at your very essence. What's that light of you? What's that fire of you? And when you do that inner work of who am I, and who am I at my very essence, and how do I want to make a difference with this work of mine? And you make that connection from yourself to how you want to make a difference. And I think that those two things together really ignite this fire in us that gives us a passion for, I'm doing this, I'm stepping into places that are uncomfortable, despite the fact that it feels uncomfortable. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to step into it because I believe in myself and I believe in what the impact that I can make with my work.
Okay, completely agree with this.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like we can be there intellectually. Like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step into it. How do we tap into the courage to do it?
Oh, so good. So I'll tell you my own story from the perspective when I first started my business, and I had been training speakers and for many years, even in the corporate world. And then when I started my business, 15 years ago, I was like, my coach said to me, she says, the fastest way you're going to grow your business is by speaking. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to grow my business in another way. And because I was terrified of speaking, I was terrified of really putting myself out there. And it was this, I was playing small in it. So that does take courage. And I kind of went my first couple of years without doing speaking and like really putting my voice out in bigger ways. And there was a point where I did a weekend. I was really working on my mission and vision statement for my business. And my husband was at a conference. So I went with him and I took over the hotel room and I had flip chart papers all around the room. And at the end of that weekend, I had my vision statement or my mission statement. And it said that I wanted to impact 1 million women around the world, helping them raise up their voice and their visibility and grow their businesses. And when I wrote that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to that big goal, by putting a big goal out there, that big number. I was like, I am never going to get there one person at a time. I have to really get over myself and learn to walk into finding my voice and, putting it out in bigger ways. And so that was kind of the first catalyst for me. And then I think the next part of that was, I was like, okay, how do I do this? Right. I mean, how do I really do this? Because, that's a great declaration, but how do I really go do this? And as I stepped into doing that, what happened was I had a friend who was teaching a story class. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the story class and I'm going to, learn to tell my story. And so I went to it. It was a 4-week class. And I was so terrified to tell my story at the end of that week. I was just like, really? How can I be so afraid to tell my story? And I was terrified to tell my story. And so I did the class. And at the end, I told the story in front of a big audience. And I was like, oh my God, that was fun. And so I decided at that point that I actually really liked it. And what I discovered was that telling story was my pathway into getting over myself on. And then the other part of it wasn't when I really realized it wasn't about me. It was really about the people in the audience. And if I could look at the audience and say, okay, if I can help make a difference for some of these women in this room, that's going to light me up. So those two things, the story and really being able to turn the dial on, it's not about me, it's about the people in the room, really turned it around for me. So it was like, okay, I love doing this and it's fun. And I'm going to just really step into doing this.
So then did you just start speaking in
I
many
did.
places?
Yeah, I did. I started speaking and I love speaking today. And it's, we all have our own little hangups about getting visible. And I think it's doing that work to figure out what's holding me back from getting visible and really just walking in my light, right? Like owning the strength of who I am and, walking like that. And it's a different way of being, owning our messages, embodying our messages.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a hard thing to do, like intellectually, going back to what you were saying, I'm like, intellectually, I understand that. Yes, I'm on board. I want to step into my message. I want to be able to speak. But then, boom, you freeze because you don't have the courage. You allow your amygdala to take over your brain and just say, that's not going to work out. And you also, at the same time, mentioned that your coach said, and so I want to go into, make a little bit of emphasis on a coach. Talk to us about the importance of investing in coaches and mentors, because I'm sure the first time that you paid for a coach or, a higher level, it might have been something that doesn't even seem like high end now, like maybe it was $1,000 or can you please tell us about that story? Because that's actually, I think, the first step of courage of getting the support from someone else, because if that coach wouldn't have told you, you need to go speak, you might have still been sitting in your place without doing anything, and just like spinning your wheels. So talk to us about you. Tell us your story of your first mentor or coach.
Yeah, first mentor coach that I hired, it was a $12,000 investment. And I was like, oh, I can't believe I just did that. Right. And, I pulled it from a severance package that I had gotten when I left the corporate world. So I was fortunate to have that, but best investment I ever did because I learned how to put the structure into my business that enabled it to grow. Right. And that paid itself back to me many, 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 many times very early on. And so I worked with her for probably 3 years. I then went to, I took like a year or so off, and then I worked with another coach, which was the next level, was actually where I really got into fine tuning my speaking and, like, how did I really embody my message? I mean, that was something. So if I can go back to my coaches, I can really think through each one of them really taught me something that was really intricately important to me in my journey. And so I worked with that coach for a few years. And then I worked with a couple actually for several years that were an intricate part of, again, I was like, that one was about kind of the social media world and really diving into what that world, how do you really leverage that? And then eventually, and the coach I work with today, I'm in my 3rd year with her, and it's about, that next leveling of my business. So it's like every single step along the way, I have had, coaches supporting me in the growth of my business. And it's been, I just know I'm where I am today because of the wonderful coaches that I've had in my life.
And has it gotten easier for you to make those decisions and higher level investments, or is it still scary?
Totally. Well, it's always still scary. And I'm really discerning. I think when I found my current coach today, I had actually looked for a couple of years. I was like, okay, I knew I had my next level coach that I was looking for. And I'd meet with people and I'm like, no, that's not the person. I'd meet with someone, that's not the person. And my current coach, I was like, I knew at my very gut. I actually heard her on some podcasts. I heard her on a podcast. So then I started binging on her content and I was like, oh, she had me. And so by the time I got onto a call with her, I already knew I was going to work with her because it was so in alignment with where I knew I wanted to be going in my business. And so it's that gut instinct that tells us this is the right person. And I think that's really important because, there's been a couple along the way that kind of fell in between the ones I talked about that, I'd start to try out and it wasn't the right person. And my gut was like, it was like, no, this is just not the right person. And so we have to really trust that we will find the right person if we really open ourselves up to. I remember writing on my vision board, I'm going to find my next coach this year. And I did. So it's that putting that intention out there. Who's the one that's supposed to guide me in this next phase?
I love that. And thank you for sharing about your vision board and locking yourself in a hotel room, and doing your mission and vision. Go deeper into that part and how important that is of visualizing, of imagining, of getting clarity to what it is that you want. That would be part of the strategy, would be my guess, versus the spiritual, or a blend of both too.
It's really a blend of both, right? Because you have to drop into that space and you have to make that kind of sacred container to let dreams come forth. And I think that we can get really linear in our thinking. And I think the more that we can get out of I don't know if you know this, but I do equine guided coaching. So for my clients, I'll bring them in for retreats once a year with my horses. And it's a weekend retreat with the horses. They don't ride. It's coaching, like equine assisted work is what it is. But for myself, some of the best things I can do is I can go hang out in the barn and like just get into my own little zone and be with the horses, or I can go out on a hike and be in a zone. So making that sacred container, whether it's, at the beginning of the year when I'm, thinking through the new year and, making vision boards, or, I don't always make vision boards, but I often do lots of fun planning, and I like to do that. So I like to make these sacred containers where it's like, okay, this whole day is going to be about this. What do I want to be creating in my life and in my business? And being curious about that and journaling and, using lots of prompts, and that can really be fun. And it's the way that we can get big visions for our businesses that, if we just leave ourselves in front of a computer, it's kind of a boring place to do that. Let's do it in other kind of experiences, if you will.
That is beautiful. We're going to take a quick pause and we'll be right back. I want to share an amazing opportunity with you. My signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening this November 7th through the 9th in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears and unworthiness so that you can have a greater impact on the world. These in-person events are life transforming. Just listen to what one of our participants have to say.
Hi, I'm Val Romero. I'm attending Tanya's retreat, probably about the 5th one now. And the reason I keep attending is because she has so much information to offer around money mindset for us personally, but mostly around our business and how the way we're conducting our business with limiting beliefs that we might have. And so coming to a retreat like this really just does something for your soul. It rejuvenates you for your business, and it also has you thinking differently about your business. So if you get a chance, and there's a chance in November, I would highly recommend it. Thank you.
If you found this inspiring, if you'd like to join us in Santa Fe, New Mexico this November, I'm gifting you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and a review on iTunes, take a screenshot, and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type in event discount to claim your discounted ticket. You can find that email in our show notes as well as the website to our event. I look forward to being your mentor and guide to transform your life. See you in Santa Fe. So Cammy, you were talking about some of these practices, from vision board to journaling to hanging out with your horses, and just allowing things to be. What are some of your daily practices? Like, what's a day in the life of Cammy look like?
Yeah. So this time of year is my favorite time of year because it's lovely outside, right? We've got such lovely weather right now. So I wake up, I always meditate every morning. I'm big on doing my meditation every morning. I journal, and I sometimes fall in and out of my journaling, but I'm right now in a good practice of journaling. So I'm like, okay, I journal every day. And then get up, I make my mushroom drink that I make every morning, and I take the dogs on a walk and we live in the woods in the foothills of Colorado. So it's a lovely outdoor morning. And I've got horses that I need to tend to in the morning. So I get back, I tend to the horses, and then, I give myself a couple of hours every morning that I'm not rushing to just jump into my computer. And, I never put meetings on my on my calendar before 10 a.m. in general. We did this today a little bit early, but it was because I know we wanted to get this in and I wanted to get this interview in. But in general, I'm pretty good about not putting a meeting on before 10 a.m. And so giving myself that space to just be, I think is really, really important. And it's, I get into my work day and I don't tend to break as often as I think I should. I have these perceptions of, I should take pauses. I should do, and there's some days where I try to make that happen. And a lot of days, more days than not, that I don't make that happen. So that morning time is really sacred to me. And I am trying to be better at taking the dogs out for a little mini walk in the middle of the day, just to get away from the computer and that sort of thing. But I think that space is really important.
I love it because I'm the same way as you, and I've been practicing that for decades. But the problem was when my daughter was born, it's
Totally.
How do you do this now? No one told me how to do
Yeah.
Always 2 or 3 hours. My days wouldn't start until 10 too,
Yeah.
the same thing. And
Yeah.
so do you have kids or not, Cammy? Have you
I
gone through
do,
that
but he's
phase?
41.
Okay, you're done with that. I'm learning to navigate. So for any
Yeah.
listener that's like, oh, well, that's so easy. Just so you know, I have an 11-year-old and
Yeah.
it's different phases, different
Totally.
times that you can still allocate those times, like Cammy's saying, of just being, and of whether it's journaling. I remember when she was born, like I couldn't do my journaling practice. So I was like, okay, I'll just do a meditation, or I would do meditation while she was breastfeeding, in the morning or in the evening, so
Yeah.
you have to kind of adjust depending on the
Totally.
time frame. I'm curious, before I move on to another question, your journaling, do you just do stream of thought or do you have prompts for your journaling, or is it a mix?
It's a mix, right? I mean, typically I'm a stream of thought journaler. I have a journal that, I have boxes of journals in my closet that at some point I really need to get rid of because I don't think I really want anybody to go through and read them all. But so that's what I typically have done. Right now, I just got a set of journals that I am really enjoying, that they're Sandra Yancey's, who was the founder of
From
eWomen
eWomen.
Network. Yeah. And she just launched these like 90-day journal. And I love the format of them. And they start with like a reading and then some prompts that associated with it. And it's 30 days of like readings. And then you come back the next 30 days and you go back through the same ones and you more prompts around that. So it's kind of a neat process. And I've just started it within the last month. And I'm really enjoying it. It's a different way for me to journal, but I'm liking it right now.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And as you were explaining your day and the importance of time, and you've mentioned it before, you've mentioned about teaching the women that you work with about abundance prosperity, but
Mhm.
also time prosperity,
Right.
because I feel like we've been so conditioned and programmed into patriarchy and into the men's cycle of 9 to 5, and we
Yeah.
work, and those hours and corporate, and that's how it runs. There's actually a great episode with Kate Engu. I can't remember her episode number. I'll look it up for anyone that's interested in it, where she talks about the feminine cycle, like working and operating with our female cycle.
Totally.
We operate in 28 days. Even if you're in menopause, even if you're pregnant, you can still work with the lunar cycle because it is a 28-day cycle versus a 24-hour cycle that men have. With that said, and your focus on time prosperity, let's talk a little bit more about that, because you were mentioning you were very aware that sometimes you might not carve out, enough rest time throughout the day. I do the same thing, like yesterday, I was like, I need to go on a hike at the end of the day because I was back-to-back calls, like I flexed a little bit, like you're flexing for the podcast this morning, that's not your normal day to do it this early. But talk to us, like, how can we balance this time prosperity and not be rushing or being under the illusion of rush, or there's not enough time, or the linear
Couple
way?
ways. Yeah, a couple ways. One is simplification of your business. And that was something that I really had to learn, where I had lots of products. It was like, every month I was marketing people into a different direction. And I didn't really have a true sales process within my business. And so learning how to structure my business model, learning how to structure my marketing so that it became simplified. I cut back on some products that I had. I changed how I was marketing so I wasn't always off. I found a consistent rhythm in how I was marketing and how I was introducing people into my business. And the more I could get consistent with that, that simplified what I had to be doing. It's my team and I we have rhythms in how we do things now because we've done it and it's working for us. And then, so that's one thing is really, how do we simplify our messaging? How do we simplify our products? How do we simplify our business in general? And that was huge because that opened up, it took out extra things in our business, right? So we weren't just adding more stuff all the time. And I have to be reminded because sometimes I like to create new things, and I'll get the reminder, no, don't add more things in, just really refine what you're doing now, right? So keep focused there. And so that has been a really important part of this. The other part of it was just my relationship with time. And when I started to think about how I was moving through my days, I was putting meetings back to back to back to back. And I don't do that anymore. I really make sure that there's space in between meetings and that I'm not rushing from one place to another, because the rush and the energetic movement that we move through our days in really, really matter. Is if we're in a rush mode, it catches us and we just get into this frenzy energetically in our bodies because we're like moving between things all the time. We're moving from, the end of the day into dinner time, and we're rushing, rushing, rushing. And we never have this where we pull that steam dial back. And I had to learn to do that. And I think my aha moment I had with this is I was actually going to fly to Toronto one day, and I'd been kind of playing with the word time prosperity. And I decided that I was going to approach that day with time prosperity, and which is like really an odd place to do it. And like being in airports, trying to meet, flights and all that sort of thing. I'm like, I'm just going to do this day in time prosperity. And it changed the whole energy of that day. I drove down my canyon like early in the morning. It was still dark, and it was like, oh, look at the stars, look at the moon. And I turned on nice music, and I, got to the airport, and I had space and time to move between all the different places I had to go to within the airport. So everything was in a different time pace. And I obviously had to make more, I had to make sure that I wasn't rushing to a gate, but I gave myself that time to make sure that I had time, plenty of time prosperity. And I think it was my biggest lesson is like, you can create time prosperity anywhere. It's an energetic shift. It's a mindset shift.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that story of that day because, and I do find myself many times in that energetic space. I think we get used to it. We get into a habit of it.
We do.
And then what we start doing is we start secreting the hormones
Yes.
that go into it. And so, whether it's the adrenaline, the cortisol, to keep us going. And so it's very hard to then, unless you purposely, like you did, of saying, no, let me start getting into this habit. How can we break that hormonal pattern, that habitual energetic frenzy movement? How can we do that? Because it sounded like you became very mindful and present in that moment, even in the what could be a parent rushing through airports
Right.
because you're traveling. So how
Right.
can, especially the busy moms, we have listeners here that we're trying
Yeah.
to run a business or working, and we have kids, and you have to get them to the activities, and maybe you don't have the support and family living nearby. How can we tap into that, Cammy, and start breaking those cycles?
And it's such an epidemic around us where we see that happening. I mean, it's just, especially in the world of entrepreneurs, and especially in the world of mom entrepreneurs. I see it. I mean, I have clients who are mom entrepreneurs, and I think that the reminder that we have to, that self reminder that we have to take care of ourselves first. We have to breathe into our own mask first before we can before we can care for all those around us. And so finding the ways that we can pause, that we can be cognizant of how we're moving through the day when we start to feel that frenzy and when we're not feeling the frenzy. It's like really starting to practice that. And even like when I think about what you were saying about, you would meditate when you were breastfeeding. Actually, it's such a beautiful scene, right? I mean, it's like such a moment where you're in a peaceful place with your baby and you took that moment to meditate. I think that's really beautiful. It's a beautiful example of that because it just creates this sacred circle around you and your baby. I mean, so I think that we have to look at our lives through the lens of where are those moments that we can find and where can we pause, even if it's like 60 seconds before we finish one thing and we move to the next thing. How can we remind ourselves to pause and, not pause and like, okay, what's my email say? Or, like that's like kind of like filling that space up, but it's actually like being there, paying attention to what's going on in your body and just touching back into yourself before you step into the next thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And the reminder too, of like, could I tap into more of those moments, because we've all had them. You had it at the airport. I had it with the breastfeeding and meditating. But can we become present? First, become present to that moment. And second, can we start replicating more of those moments? The thing is, though, as I'm listening to you, Cammy, is I almost feel like busyness is worn as a badge of honor. Like there's a cultural thing going on too,
I don't even
especially
use the
here in
word.
the US.
Yeah, I won't use the word busy. I won't say that I'm busy. I'll say
So
life
what
was
do you
full.
like? I do the same thing. That's so
Oh, that's
funny.
funny.
I started replacing that last year because I had people that would come up like, I know you're busy. And I'm like, no, I'm not busy. I can listen to you, but it was a full day, or something like that. Like I'm trying to shift the language with it.
Yeah.
But how can we start breaking this stigma too and being okay and saying, like, I just got back from 6 weeks in Spain. I was working. It wasn't 6 weeks of vacation. It was just part of like a dream that I've had of the digital nomad, getting back home.
Oh, awesome.
That's a whole other conversation because there were some things that weren't 100% put in place. So it felt very heavy at certain points, and time scarcity, even though I know about this. But how can we start honoring and respecting, taking time off and shifting that conversation and the culture instead of wearing that badge of honor of superwoman, like, yeah, look at me, I'm the super mom, or I'm the superwoman doing all these things. What can we start doing to put that in place, Cammy, to break free from it?
I mean, I can think of what's coming to mind right now is a client of mine who has an amazing business that she's built, and she's also working herself to the bone. And you can't do this. You can't keep up at this pace. And it's caught up with her, right? And so we have to create boundaries. I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be boundaries. We have to determine what's our boundaries. What is that? What's the rhythm that we want to be living in? And how do we, where are we at our peak performance? Where do we feel kind of, like we need more inner space? Where do we need more quiet space? Because we all have our own rhythms, right? So and you kind of hit on this earlier about the rhythms of women. And, we can look at it from a rhythm of a month. We can look at it a rhythm of a week, a rhythm of a day. There's all these different ways. So we have to really starting to tune into how do I feel at different times of the day and how do I really want to feel? And so leverage our knowledge around that, but also to then get really clear about what do I want my work life to look like? And start to create boundaries around that and get really good at not breaking those boundaries. And because, it's like if we continuously let the creep scope, or the scope creep happen into our personal lives, that's where we see things start to break down. And I think we can look at that. That's a place where, okay, where do I continually let, people break into my boundaries? And, I've been there where I've let people break into my boundaries all the time. And it's like, okay, how do I change that up? We make that decision that we're going to do something different. So for example, for a couple of years, I've had Fridays as my open day where I don't do meetings. And last year I was horrible about letting meetings be into my Fridays. I mean, I was just really bad about it. I just kept breaking my own rules, and I was the one doing it. And this year I've been much, much better at leaving that day open. And it's a creative day for me, right? I can create podcasts. I can do, all sorts of things that I can do during that time. And so that's important to me is that, we look at what's that lifestyle. I have another client. And just the good news on the client that I was talking about, she's actually started turning things over to her team. And now she is finding better boundaries in her life. She's actually honoring her boundaries. And that's really exciting for me to see. I have another client who is a mom, and she left her corporate world about a year and a half ago, and she runs a high-end group of moms who do like above VA work, but more like operational work and project management kind of work. And she was really clear she wanted to work during her kids' naps. And she has built, she's on her way to making a six-figure business probably within the next, probably within the next 6 months. I think she'll hit 6 figures. And she's, her growth has just happened so much, so well. And she's working during her nap times and then on Tuesdays where she's got childcare. And she's growing this business in such an incredible way because she put boundaries. And then she's really good when she's working. She's very focused. So, uber focused on what she's doing. So I really admire what she's doing as well.
These are fabulous examples. I love sharing stories with that. We're going to take another quick pause. I want to share an amazing opportunity with you. My signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening this November 7th through the 9th in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears and unworthiness so that you can have a greater impact on the world. These in-person events are life transforming. Just listen to what one of our participants has to say.
Hi, my name is Geraldine Schaefer. It was really an honor to be here at Tanya's event. I got invited through a friend because I was looking to find a mentor that can guide me to get more clarity to get to my next level on my coaching services. So during this event, not only I was able to get the clarity that I needed, but in also she teach us the strategies that I need to start implementing into my coaching business to go to the next level. And I'm looking forward to continue working with Tanya, and I really, truly appreciate it. Thank you, Tanya.
If you found this inspiring, if you'd like to join us in Santa Fe, New Mexico this November, I'm gifting you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and a review on iTunes, take a screenshot, and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type in event discount to claim your discounted ticket. You can find that email in our show notes as well as the website to our event. I look forward to being your mentor and guide to transform your life. See you in Santa Fe. So we were just talking about setting boundaries, the importance of that, busyness, and starting to break away from this stigma of busyness. Do you feel that we get busy or try and do everything because we're trying to avoid feelings?
Oh, yeah. I've definitely done that. I have definitely done that. It's, I grew up in a family where we didn't talk about feelings. I mean, that was just, farm country. We just didn't talk about feelings. And I think even when I was in my corporate world, it was just not something that, I spent a lot of energy on looking at what my feelings were. I was pretty good at reading them. So it was kind of new to me to discover, oh, I'm supposed to actually examine my feelings and figure out what's underneath of that and explore that and, let some of that move through my body and heal and, all the different things, right? That was all really new to me 15 years ago. It really was. And so I have definitely been in that mode where like I can just put myself into do mode. I'm really good at doing it. I've always been a good doer. And in my corporate days, I was known as somebody, give her that project, she'll get it done. And, I'm really good at looking at my business and saying, yep, I will get that done. So I have to know, what I know about myself is I can fall into that trap of just doing, and not paying attention to feelings, not paying attention to what's really underneath of something. And I've had to learn that awareness of being able to tap into that is, really what helped me grow and evolve. And I always say that, being an entrepreneur has been the biggest growth journey that I've ever been on in my life. And it's because of that. It's because when we look and when we can explore what's going on inside, and if we don't explore what's going on inside, we really dim our light, right? We start to play smaller because all of that gets tensioned up and bottled up in our body versus like letting it flow through us and, so that we can. So it's really an important practice to do that. And the only way we can do that is to be aware of what's there.
So important. But those feelings can be uncomfortable. And the only way to go through them is just go through them, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Well, Cammy, where can people find you? I know you have a conference coming up. Can you share a little bit about your conference up in Denver?
Sure.
And if you're listening to this episode past the conference, look for the conference next year. But if not, share a little bit.
Yeah. So this is my 10th year of doing the Extraordinary Women Ignite Conference. And it's exciting that it's the 10-year anniversary of it. And it's all about raising up your voice, your vision, your visibility, how you're putting yourself out into the world. It's a great place to and look at what you want to accomplish in the new year. So I create lots of space for you to actually work on your plan for the new year. The women in the room are amazing. I always am blessed by the women that are there. I have it a pretty extraordinary group of women that are there, and many have been there almost every single year, which is awesome. I have 2 women that'll be there this year that have been there 9 out of the 10 years. So that's super cool to have that repeat. People keep coming back. So it's October 24th through 26th in Golden, Colorado. Great airfares right now. There's like $39 Southwest airfares going on all over the place. So it's easy to get to Denver, and it's going to be a really great event. I have amazing speakers lined up too. I mean, our keynote speaker is a woman who has climbed the second highest summit on all 7 continents. And
Wow.
she's going to be talking about, and she wasn't even a mountaineer before that. And she is going to be talking about we can do hard things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Wow,
Yeah.
Cammy, this has been a pleasure. One last thing before I wrap up that I like asking my guests. What
Yeah.
can our listeners do to live a life with more courage?
Mm. Know who you are, know that light of you, and then know how you want to make a difference with that light of you, because that will help you stretch. That will help you stretch into places where it may not feel comfortable. And if you really recognize there's a fire inside of you that wants to make a difference, that's going to ignite you to really step into new spaces and make those stretches with courage.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cammy. It was great having you here. And
Thank you, Tanya.
for anyone listening, get yourself up to Denver, October 24th, 25th, right?
24th through 26th. Yep.
24th to 26th. And thank you so much, Cammy, once again.
Thank you, Tanya. It's great to be here with you.
If you like this episode and you'd like to feel this kind of energy live and in person, I want to share with you about my upcoming event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening November 7th through the 9th in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears and unworthiness so that you can have a greater impact in the world. I'll gift you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and review on iTunes, take a screenshot, and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type in event discount to claim your discounted ticket. I look forward to being your mentor and guide to transform your life. See you in Santa Fe.